Hello everyone, thank you for watching Edupedia World videos. So in this video, we are going to discuss about the basics of change and transport system. Okay, so this is the first video, part 1. Change management in the SAP system landscape. So what is this change? Change in transport. Okay, so what is this change management? Before you can use the SAP software to control the business processes in your company, you must first adapt it to your own business needs. This is usually done in an SAP implementation project. So we say like my company is having ERP SAP. Okay, so you are using that SAP software only, but practically when you use standard SAP software for your company, you have to modify it, you have to customize it for your own business needs. So this is nothing but an implementation project. Adapting and configuring is usually an ongoing process. Even after you start using the system productively, you still need to make changes to the SAP configuration. This may be due to business or organizational changes in your company, or due to implementation of new SAP functions. So it's not only after the first implementation of your SAP in your company, but this change and making modifications is an ongoing process. So in the support and the maintenance phase also, you will need to do some changes to the SAP configuration. You want to build some new things in your system, or you want to change the existing software. Okay, so this is often linked to an upgrade to a new SAP release. And sometimes like you want to, SAP also releases some new software. It updates its own software to provide better functions, for better functionality. So in that case, you will have to go for a upgrade of your current system. So that's what we do. So Microsoft, if we have an old MS Office version, and if Microsoft has released the new version, we will have to download that and apply it into our system. So the same thing as SAP. SAP provides various tools for modifying the SAP software. Which tools you use depends on the type and the extent of your business requirements. Any modifications that you make with these tools are stored in certain tables in the SAP database. So SAP also provides some tools for modifying the software which you have. So what tools you use and everything, it is completely based on your business. Okay, and all these changes which you do are stored in certain tables in the SAP database. Now, customizing tools. The most important configuration tool is the implementation guide, IMG. You can use the IMG to make all configurations possible in the SAP standard. Any modifications you make to the SAP software in the IMG are known as customizing settings, or customizing for short. So now this particular video, it gives some important terminologies like customizing. Okay, what is change management? So in the next video, we'll learn more about the actual transport, how it happens. So in order to know that, initially we have to get accustomed, or we have to know certain terms which are important. Okay, so one of that is this customizing. Okay, so IMG, you can use this IMG, the implementation guide, to make any changes to the standard SAP software. Okay, so all those changes which you make to the standard SAP software, those are known as customizing or customizing settings. The changes that you make in the IMG are placed in the customizing tables of the SAP database. Okay, so these are stored in customizing tables. The contents of these tables are known as customizing data. When you use the SAP applications productively, the SAP runtime system analyzes this customizing data and uses it to control your business processes. Most customizing data is client specific. This means that you can choose different customizing settings for each client in your SAP system that do not affect each other. Changes to the customizing settings in one client have no effect on system actions in another client. However, there is also a significant amount of cross-client customizing data that is still relevant for all clients, such as factory calendar, etc. These settings are called cross-client customizing. Note that if you change these types of customizing settings, it affects all clients in the SAP system. So, this customization or customizing settings is nothing but the changes which we make to the standard SAP software. Okay, and the tool which is used for this is the IMG, the implementation guide. Most of the customizing data is client specific, means we have learned about clients earlier. Okay, when we install a system, we will have n number of clients. Okay, so depending upon the use, the business purpose, we can create any number of clients in the SAP system. So most of this customizing data is client specific, means if you change it in one client, it does not show any effect in the other client. So it's client dependent data. Okay, and cross client means that information is common across all the clients. So coming to customization or customizing setting, we have most of the data is client specific, it depends on the clients, and some of the data is cross client. The next terminology is ABAP Workbench. If the configuration options in the SAP standard are not enough to meet your requirements, you can also add to the SAP standard functions. SAP provides the ABAP Workbench as a complete programming environment. The ABAP Workbench includes tools for defining data structures, the ABAP dictionary, developing ABAP programs, ABAP editor, and designing interfaces like the screen painter and menu painter, as well as many other functions. Now, the standard software which SAP has provided to you is not sufficient. Okay, you want to add more functionality, then you can build your own programs, you can build your own objects, okay, and you can design interfaces, etc. For example, you can use the ABAP Workbench to develop your own report programs or transactions, or to modify or to make your own enhancements to the existing SAP programs. These enhancements are known as customer exits. However, this does require experience of the ABAP Workbench and the SAP application where you want to develop. Now, what is this ABAP Workbench? It provides and run a programming environment where you can develop your own objects, programs, etc. You can use this ABAP Workbench to develop your own programs or transactions, okay, or to make your own enhancements to the existing SAP program. If one SAP program is there, you extend it, okay. So those enhancements to the existing SAP programs are known as customer exits. So for this, you need to have some good knowledge about ABAP. The changes that you make in the ABAP Workbench are placed in the repository tables of the SAP data. The contents of these tables are known as repository data or repository objects. Apart from a few exceptions, the repository data is cross-client. As with cross-client customizing, changes to repository objects affects all clients of an SAP system. In the earlier slide, okay, we have learned about the customization, that is changes to the existing SAP software, which is done through the implementation guide. Okay, here we have two types of customizing, client specific and cross client. Most of the customizing data is client specific, so it depends on the client. Less amount of customizing data is cross client. However, when we talk about ABAP Workbench, that is, we create new programs, new objects, and ABAP Workbench gives a it gives a programming environment for you to develop all these things. Okay, so you enhance the existing SAP programs which are known as customer exits. Okay, so most of this ABAP work which you do, this type of work in the ABAP workbench, is called as repository data or repository objects. So that is customizing. This is repository, and most of this repository data is cross client, that is, it is common across all the clients. Okay, so when we talk about transports, if we talk about whether that transport is nothing but movement, right? So here we should know about customizing data or it's a repository data. Okay, so that we should be able to differentiate and know. Now, change in transport system. So this is known as CTS. The CTS is the central tool for managing changes to customizing and repository data that you make in IMG or ABAP Workbench. So CTS is the change in transport system. So this is used for managing changes to customizing or repository data. The CTS records all changes in change requests. So whatever changes we are doing, okay, that is recorded in change request. The changes in change request can be linked together logically or can be completely independent of each other. Developers in a team can use a common request. You can create documentation for a change request where you describe your changes in more detail. This makes it easier to see which data was changed by which user and to what purpose. Okay, so whatever you are trying to change, okay, that is recorded in a change request. Okay, so this customizing data or repository data, if you make any changes, that is recorded in a change request, and these change requests can be dependent on each other or independent. Developers in a team can use a common request also. Okay, and you can add some documentation to a change request also where you can describe it in detail. When you have finished your work in the IMG or ABAP Workbench or have reached a certain stage, you can release the request. The change request is then used to copy the changes from this client to other clients or systems. This automatic procedure is known as a transport. So after completing your work, okay, up to say like I have modified this object now, okay, a change request is created for that customizing or repository data. So you can release the request. Releasing the request means it is ready to be moved to other clients or other systems. So this movement is known as transport. So transports of change by CTS allows you to develop in one environment, test your development work in a test environment, and then if the tests are successful, use it productively. This makes sure that the productive operations are not placed at a risk by faulty settings or program errors. So that's why in a real-time scenarios, transports are very important. So what all changes we are making to our data, whatever it is, customizing or repository, so is it recorded in a change request? This change request can be moved from one client to another client or from one system to another system. That procedure is known as a transport. Okay, and why we need a transport? Because to be more stable, okay, we shouldn't affect our productive operations. That's why we have different systems where we develop the changes, then you transport it to another system where you test it thoroughly, and then only you put it in the actual production system where end users are accessing it. If by any mistake an improper change is moved, a faulty change is moved into a production system, it will have huge business impact which the customer never wants. So that's why, so in many scenarios we have seen like a faulty transport into a production system has caused lot of loss of revenue. Okay, it has impacted the production system highly. So that's why, even though the change is very small, okay, so it might alter something which might affect your end user production operations. So that is, we do not want that. So that's why we have different systems where we build it, we test it, and we put it in production. So this movement from one system to another or from one client to the other is is transport. Transports of changes between clients and systems are just subject to rules that are set in the CTS configuration in the system landscape. One rule may be that changes are transported into the test environment before they can be copied into the production environment. All transports are logged so that you can see when a change request was imported into a client or a system and whether there were any errors. Okay, so this transport and every whatever implementation you have done, you will lay some guidelines or procedures. Okay, so even for this CTS we have certain rules. Okay, so when to transport into production or when to move into test, okay, and how much time it should be for tested, and before this deadline it should reach the production. So you can make your own rules. Okay, and all the transports, okay, SAP provides some transport tools, okay, the transactions where we can check the transport, like when it is moved, who created it, what does it contain, everything. So all the information about the transport is logged into all the systems. That is also important. Application data. In contrast to customizing and repository data, application data is not part of the configuration of the SAP software. The actual application data, it isn't a part of the SAP software. Application data is the business data that the SAP applications process when you use them productively. It is split up into master data such as material master, customer master, and vendor master, and movement data such as contracts and financial documents. Application data is always client specific. So apart from this, you have seen different types of data like customizing and repository. So this application data is nothing but it's the actual business data which you process. Okay, so this data, it's not a part of the configuration of the SAP software. Okay, and examples of SAP data, application data are material master, customer master, vendor masters. Okay, and you have contracts, financial documents, etc. And generally application data is client specific. It depends on the client. The CTS does not manage changes to application data. It is also impossible to use the CTS to transport application data into other clients or systems. If you want to copy master data and movement data between clients in an SAP system, or from a non-SAP system into an SAP system, or if you want to set up this data automatically, you can use other tools such as ALE, that is application link enabling, CAT, computer aided test tool, or use application interfaces of the BOR, business object repository. Okay, so CTS has no function. Okay, it can't do anything for the movement of this application data from one system to another. See, like you have some data in the production system, application data, and you want to put it in the test or development box. So CTS does not have, it cannot do this transport. Okay, so for that you have to use other tools like ALE or CAT or BOR, business object repository. Okay, so far we have started with what is this change management in an SAP system landscape. Okay, the system landscape. Next we learned about what is this terminology, system landscape. Landscape is nothing but you have established SAP, so you will have multiple systems. Okay, quality, training, demo system, development system, production system. You can have n number of systems. So all these systems, they can be connected. Okay, so the systems and their connectivity, so this is all known as the landscape. So next we have learned about customizing data, then we have learned about repository data. Okay, so then we have learned about what is CTS, the change in transport, and application data. So we have seen different types of data, and transport is nothing but the movement of data between systems or clients. Now, clients and their roles. So earlier also, I remember in some video we have discussed about when we have learned what is SAP software, we have learned about what is a client and the different types of clients. So now again we'll just go through it, because this client, it plays an important role in transport CTS. When you log on to an SAP system, you log on to a particular client of the system. Any activities you carry out in the system are always carried out in one client. When you plan your SAP system landscape, you must consider which clients you need for which activities. Yes. So when you log on to an SAP system, you log on to a particular client. Client is the 3-digit number. Okay. So generally, based on our role, we log on to a particular client and we do the activities there. By assigning activities to be performed in a client, you give each client a particular role. This section describes the most important client roles. So by what type of tasks which are to be performed in this client, it is assigned the role. Okay. Now we will see what those roles are. Since you need to adapt the SAP software for your own business needs, each SAP system landscape requires a client where customizing settings and possible ABAP Workbench developments can be made. This client is known as the Customizing and Development Client, or Customizing Client for short. The abbreviation CUST, CUST, is used for this client. We need a client where we need to do some developments, okay, for customizing or for ABAP Workbench, whatever it is. Okay, so that client is known as the Customizing and the Development Client. Okay, and it's known as CUST. Before you can use the customizing settings and Workbench developments productively, you need to test them extensively for errors. Any faulty settings can seriously disrupt productive operations and at worst lead to the loss of productive data. The integrated nature of various SAP applications means there are many dependencies between the different customizing settings. Even an experienced customizing developer may not discover these dependencies immediately. The correctness of the settings can only be guaranteed with extensive testing. The client where these tests are made is Quality Assurance Client, QTST for short. Now, you have developed, okay, something. Now, before we put it in the production system where end users operate, you have to test it extensively, because there might be some dependencies between SAP programs or objects. Okay, in the standard SAP objects or programs also there are some dependencies. So unless we tested with our data, okay, we don't know like how well it works. You have thought something and you might have developed it slightly different. So the actual result which you want is you're not getting it by running that program. Okay, so that's why always when you do some development, you shouldn't immediately go and put in the production. You should have a different client, okay, for testing, and that is known as the Quality Assurance Client, QDST. A separate client is required for productive use of the SAP system, so that this client can be used without disruption. It is essential that no customizing settings or Workbench developments are made here, and also that no tests are carried out. This client is known as the production client, prod for short. You have the production system, okay, so that's the productive client. So here we are not expected to do any developments or do any testings. It's the actual, it's a live system where the users are accessing it. So that's the production client. It's known as prod for short. These three clients, CUST, QTST and prod, are the central clients that exist in every system landscape. Standard system landscapes have precisely one client for each of these client roles. Okay, so we need to have a CUST client, a QTST and a production. Now in a real-time scenario, we have different systems playing each role of these three clients. Okay, because one SAP system can have n number of clients, okay, we shouldn't put all these three clients in a single system. Okay, so that in the next slides we'll see why we shouldn't put. Okay, so that's why we have multiple systems, one for development, one for testing and one for production. Okay, we recommend that you make all your customizing settings in a single customizing client and then use the CTS to transport them to the other clients. We also recommend that you do not make any customizing or workbench developments in the quality assurance or the production clients. You can make sure of this by making appropriate client settings. That's why now I have a production system. So by mistake, anybody, a user or even any, the SAP team, they might by mistake, if they can click change modify button on any ABAP program or an object. So if you put the client role as prod in production, okay, whatever client you are logging into production system, if you put it as prod, you will not be able to make any changes. Similarly, if you put as Q2ST, there also you will not be able to make any changes. Okay, you can only test it. So that's why if you want to open the system for developments, you have to change the client role of the system as cust. Okay, so earlier we have studied about clients. Now any SAP system landscape, okay, the general business systems will have 3 clients, and generally they are on different systems, physical systems. So one is the development, it is mapped to the cust client. The quality system, it's mapped to the QTST, and the actual production system has the prod client role. Now, in addition to the central clients, you can also set up other clients for other tasks. However, you must remember that each extra client takes up additional system resources, main memory and database space. They also need to be administered. For example, you can set up and administrate access authorizations for the users and also distribute any changes to other clients with the CTS. You must weigh up the advantages and disadvantages of setting up other clients. So like development test client, test, prototype or the sandbox client, sand, and training client, TRNG. So these are the basic ones which we need in a real business scenario, 3 clients. In addition to this, you can set up other clients also. It's up to your own discrepancy, because setting up another client or another system, it's nothing but it will fetch you have to put some extra cost. Okay, because you have to add up more database space, you have to increase the CPU memory, all these things, or you have to install a new hardware system for setting up the other clients. So it's all based on the cost. Okay, so other examples are like the development test client, where the development team generally whatever they have developed, they will test it themselves. Okay, the sandbox client, where anybody can try to play, learn, it's the sand client. And the training client, it's used for training. Okay, in addition to this, we have a demo client also, DEMO. So that client is used for demonstration to the end users before the production system goes live. Like that we can have other clients also, but that is totally, it's it depends on the business needs. So this is about clients and their roles. Now, system landscape. So earlier we have said, like, we have a system landscape where the transports move from one system to the other. So what is the system landscape? The system landscape contains all the SAP systems that you have installed. It can consist of several system groups whose SAP systems are linked by transport routes. So the landscape consists of various SAP systems which we have installed. Okay, so we have several groups. Systems are clubbed into a group and they are linked with some transport routes. After you decide which clients you need to decide how to distribute them amongst the different SAP systems. You can set up multiple clients independently of one another in a single SAP system. However, when you configure the data, you must remember that cross-client customizing settings and depository objects are identical for all clients in a single SAP system. Changes made in one client apply immediately to all other clients. Now, after you decide like how many clients you need, okay, that is this cust, QST, production and the other clients. Okay, so you have to set up different systems and assign each client role to a system. Okay, but here one important thing is like we have the customizing data, cross client customizing data, and generally the repository objects which are cross client. So the cross client data means if you make any changes in one client, that immediately affects all other clients also. So that's why in my earlier slide I have said in a single system we cannot generally create 3 different clients and assign them these 3 roles, QST, cust and production, because there is some data. If you make changes to one client, it immediately affects all other clients, that is the cross client data. So we should keep that in mind before assigning these roles to different SAP systems. Now, SAP generally says we should have a 3 system landscape. Okay, in a real business scenario, SAP suggests to have a 3 system landscape in which each of the central clients has its own SAP system. That's what. Each of this cust has one own system, QTST has its own system, and production has its own system. This consists of a development system, DEV, a quality assurance system, QAS, and the production system, PRT. We have 3 different systems. There's IDs, Dev, QAS, and production. The development system contains the customizing client cust. Okay. The quality assurance system contains the quality assurance client QTST, and the production system contains the production client prod. Okay, so we have 3 different systems and we have each of the client role assigned to 3 different systems. Make all the changes to the customizing data and the repository objects in the customizing client. So we make the changes here. When you release the corresponding change requests, they are transported into the quality assurance system. So once you release it, okay, after making the changes, you release it. So it is transported to the QAS system. This means that the changes to the cross client data only appears in the quality assurance client after the transport. So only once the data is moved here, the new changes reflect here. In the quality assurance client, you can test whether the transports are complete or whether any linked changes are missing and are still in unreleased change requests. If the test is successful, the change requests are transported into the production client. The production client is completely separate from the other clients as regards cross-client data. You develop here and you transport it. Okay, so here we test it. Okay, so in my change request is nothing but it's a modification to an object or a report or whatever it is. So that can be linked to some other objects. Okay, or it is linked to some other objects which were changed or not changed. Okay, so you test everything here and then only you move to the production system. See, similarly here the other clients like the training, test, the sandbox client, so you can club them with the development of the quality assurance client. But do not, the production system which is available to the end users should have only one client role, that is the prod. Okay, so please do not add other client roles to this system. Isolate it. Otherwise, we might face some problems due to the changes of data which will be made. So this is a 3 system landscape. And these 3 systems are connected. So this is nothing but it's a subsystem group. So I have grouped these 3 systems, assigned different client roles to each of them. Okay, we develop the changes here, we move it, we test them here, finally we move and put them into the production system. A 2 system landscape is an alternative for smaller SAP implementations where little workbench development takes place. Now say I don't have that much budget to go for a 3 system landscape, so for very small SAP implementations we go for a 2 system landscape where very little workbench development takes place, the cross client changes. See here the entire why we are worried about having different clients on different systems, it's because of the cross client data. If the data is whatever you have in your system is everything is client dependent, then in one system only I can create 3 different clients and assign their cust, QST and production. So whatever changes of data I'm making in one client of the system does not impact the other client in the same system, because all data which I have is client dependent only. But in real time scenario that is not the case. Okay, you have cross client data. So if you in same system, if I have cust as one client, okay, then if I log into it and make some changes, then that same change will be visible to the production client also. So that's why we are splitting the roles here. But in very small SAP implementations where you have little workbench development, you can go for a two system landscape. The two system landscape does not include a separate quality assurance system. The quality assurance client is also in the development. So here also still we isolate the production client, and all the other client roles are on a different system. So we have only two systems, the development and the production. We do not recommend a one system landscape containing all the central clients in a single SAP system. So SAP says no, one system landscape. Joint usage of hardware resources and cross-client data places serious restrictions on how a single system operates. In particular, once the system is used productively, you can no longer develop in it unless you stop productive operations for the development and test phase. Okay, so SAP says like we never say use a one system landscape where on a single system you have different clients and each play a different role. Okay, because of the cross client data. So if you make changes in one client, that will impact the other clients, it will impact the testing. So here also there is a disadvantage. When the development team is logged in and making some changes to the cross client data, so the testing team can be able to see it. Okay, so that will impact their testing. So until all the development has been made, the testing team cannot. Okay, so until all the development is made and stopped, you have to stop your development, then only you have to start the testing. Otherwise, the cross client data, you are making some changes and the testing team, they are able to see those while testing. It impacts their testing because they are trying to test a new report, okay, but it's getting changed in another client, which I'm able to see it here, so it will impact my testing. So here also it has restrictions. So in generally, whether it is a small, big or whatever it is, if you want to implement SAP, okay, as your ERP, you should have 3 different systems which play these 3 client roles: the development, the cust, the QTST and production. Okay, so here also we have big problem. So unless development is stopped, testing can't be done properly. And one system landscape, it's no way, because unless you halt your production operations and testing, okay, testing you can stop for some time and test it. Today development team is using this system, tomorrow they are testing, that is okay. But a production system has to be 24/7 up and accessible to the end users. So you can't stop your production operations at any point of time, and unless you stop them, you will not be able to develop them. So we don't go for a one system landscape anytime. So generally it's a 3 system landscape, and the landscape is nothing but we have different systems and how they are connected. Okay, the route, see here, this arrow mark shows like in this direction the data is moving. Okay, and we can have other systems also in your SAP business. Okay, but since these 3 systems are connected, they form a group. Similarly, you can have other system groups also. This is the first video about the basics of the change and the transport system. We have started with change management, then the customizing, the changes to the IMG, the implementation guide, the standard SAP software is known as customizing data. Then we have seen about repository data, and ABAP Workbench gives a programming environment for you to develop your own reports, objects, or whatever it is. Okay, this is known as depository data, and in both of them we have two types of data: cross client, that is common across all the clients, and client specific, so the data is specific to that client only. Then we have learned about CTS, the change in the transport system. So this is a tool for managing the transports, for managing the changes in transports among different clients or systems. Then application data. So CTS, it doesn't help us in moving application data from one system to another or a client. Okay, so you have to use other tools like ALE or CAT or BOR. Okay, then we have seen about what is a client and their roles, the three important client roles: the cust, the QST, and the production. Okay, so cust, the developments are made; QTST, testing is done; in production, the live client where end users access the system. So we can have other clients also, like the development, the test client, the sandbox, or the training client. Then we have seen about system landscape. So it contains all the SAP systems we have installed. So it has several system groups. Group is nothing but these systems are linked by transport routes. Okay, so here you will have to choose, like, depending upon business needs, okay, what system landscape you will have and which systems play which client roles. So ideally we have a 3 system landscape where we have 3 different systems with each client role, cust, QTST, and production assigned. So this is how the transports move. And the other clients can be attached to the development or the quality assurance system. Then in 2 system landscape we only have 2 systems, and all the development and the testing is done on one system, and the production client is on a different system. And in a 1 system landscape, which we never have, ideally which we don't have it anytime, is like you have a single system and you have different roles of these clients in the same system. Okay, so this is about the basics of the change in the transport system. So in the next videos we'll learn more about what is this transport and the different tools. Okay, thank you.